Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Crypto Analyst channel. My name is Brendan, and I hope all of you guys are having a great day no matter where you are from. And in my previous video, I gave all the reasons why Bitcoin could be bullish and the evidence that Bitcoin could be approaching a bottom. Now in today's video, I want to do the vice versa of that and walk through all the potential bearish evidence that exists out there that says Bitcoin is going to break $20,000 and Ethereum could break $1,000. So if that interests you at all, make sure you stick around for the entire length of this video, as there will be important information discussed the entire way through. But that being said, let's go ahead and first look at the Bitcoin chart, and then we'll dive into NASDAQ and some news as well. And again, we only really talk about NASDAQ here because of Bitcoin's 80 to 85% correlation to NASDAQ right now, which seems to really be one of the leading market indicators. Now, if you remember, we talked about this 200-day weekly moving average for Bitcoin, and that could be used as a bullish argument. But when we're talking about NASDAQ, I guess this could almost be used as a bearish argument, because NASDAQ has historically hit this or come near this every single time it has fallen since 2008. And even before then, before it broke down in 2008, it continued to use this area as support. And we can see that very evidently in a couple of touches between 2004 and 2007. And so after the 2008 crash, after the market had begun to recover around 2010, this continued to be support for Bitcoin every time, or excuse me, not Bitcoin, NASDAQ, every time we fell down over here. And so when we're looking for any kind of a retrace or an area that's likely to hold, this is going to be the one, because almost for the last 22 years, this has been an area that we have looked to see when the market will ultimately bottom, no matter how bad or how short this bear market could last. So NASDAQ being where it is right now, it's still about 4 to 5% away from this 200-day weekly moving average. And the reason that this is significant is because if NASDAQ could have another 4 to 5% down to the downside, and if it were to eventually come and touch this 200-day weekly moving average, well, that could mean that there's deeper waters beyond for Bitcoin. Because if we go ahead and we move Bitcoin over to the weekly chart, we can see that Bitcoin is now officially below its 200-day weekly moving average, which historically has been the sign where it has bottomed in the past. And if we go over and we look at how Bitcoin interacted with this on something like Bitstamp, we can see that this called the bottom for Bitcoin in 2018, in 2020 after a short piercing candle, and even going all the way back to 2016, 2015, and so on. And so this has been a historic bottoming indicator for Bitcoin for the last 7 years. The difference here is that we could still see some more downside if NASDAQ is going to come true and touch this 200-day weekly moving average. So 5% on NASDAQ could be something like 10, 15, maybe even 20% on Bitcoin. So I think everybody needs to be prepared for that. And what that would ultimately look like is if NASDAQ were to eventually fall down another maybe 10, 15%, maybe even 20%, that could bring Bitcoin into the upper to mid level of the teens. So maybe around 16 or even 17,000. Now, I've heard people throwing out the number that Bitcoin is going back to $10,000. I think that this is highly unlikely, but is it possible? I think ultimately the answer is yes. But again, I don't really see it happening. But down in this $10,000, $11,000 area, there is a lot of support on Bitcoin that we can very clearly see happening right over in here. So I would say between $11,000 and $13,000, there's going to be a lot of support for Bitcoin. So if we do somehow manage to get this low, I don't see it being any more than a wick for Bitcoin. But again, I think that that is the unlikely scenario. And something that is probably more likely is that NASDAQ falls maybe another 5-ish%, and that could bring Bitcoin down into the teens for just a little while. The reason why people are scared of this, you can kind of see this, is that we have the previous all-time high of Bitcoin at $20,000, and then we have our current price action of $20,000. Now, we actually bounced off of this area beautifully, and hopefully you guys can see this by the line that I'm highlighting here, but Bitcoin was able to bounce off of its previous all-time high, showing that former macro resistance, a multi-year macro resistance, can hopefully now be turned into a form of support, at least for right now. If we look at this on a daily chart, this is our third daily candle bouncing above this. However, it's really hard to say if Bitcoin can hold here. This is going to be a tough spot. It looks like we are seeing less price action and less buyers at this zone, and I think people simply are just a little bit nervous. On the MACD, there isn't too much to show. It looks like things are starting to slow down and wind down just a little bit. And on the weekly RSI, we are now at the lowest point that we've been to since all the way back in January of earlier this year. So that is another thing to keep your eye out on for the daily chart. And on the weekly chart, we are now at the lowest point that we have been to, at least on, and I believe this is the Coinbase exchange right now. This is the lowest point that we've been to since like 2014, 2012 maybe. And so we're now in the same area that we've been when the 2020 market crash happened and the 2018 market crash happened. We're below both of those. The lowest one was 2018, and that saw about a 29 on the RSI, and right now we're sitting at about a 26. So this is telling of the times that we're in, and already more money has been lost in market cap. I think it's something like $11 trillion. It might even be more than that now, which makes this worse than 2008. It makes it worse than 2020. It makes it worse than the 2000 crash. This makes it one of the worst, if not the worst, market crashes that every market has ever seen. And I talked about this a little bit previously, but everything is falling right now. It doesn't matter if it's NASDAQ or any kind of a stock or any kind of cryptocurrency. Parts of commodities are even falling. The US dollar is inflating at rapid rates, so everything is getting hit right now. And the Fed just announced that they are going to raise rates by 75 basis points, which is the most that they have raised them in over 20 years. So, with that being said, what is the case for Bitcoin in this zone, and what could really happen next? And I think the answer is, prices probably could see a little bit more downside, but things can only move down for so long. Even in a recession or a bear market, things can only move down so much before they eventually bounce. And I think that's what we have to kind of keep our eye out here for, is the potential for a quote-unquote like dead cat bounce. So that's what I'm watching out for over here. I'm looking for where the key support levels are so that I can ride one of these bounces and kind of layer into it. Now, that's just my thoughts on the crypto market. Could we head lower? Absolutely, we could, especially with how everything is looking. But as we talked about in our previous video, there certainly is not just the bearish information, right? There's a lot of bullish info that we've looked at over the past couple of days. There's a lot of bullish indicators, and there's lots of signs out there to really argue this either kind of a way. But this is a common recurring theme on this channel, but the trend is our friend, and right now the trend is downwards, and we said this for years to the upside. The trend is our friend in the macro, which is true, but in the micro we saw that the trend was our friend for a while. The trend is no longer our friend, and the reason for that being in the micro, not the macro, in the short term and midterm, is because we are now forming lower swing highs and lower swing lows. So until that breaks, the trend is going to be our friend, and I'm going to continue to remain bearish on Bitcoin, but I am definitely looking out for some kind of a bounce to happen here in the not so distant future, if that makes sense. Not a reversal. I would love a reversal, but I am looking for a little bit of a bounce here. But that's going to go ahead and sum up this video. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did enjoy, consider sticking around and hitting that like and subscribe button. It really does help out the channel a lot and helps this video get out to a lot more people. And maybe even share this video with someone that needs to hear this. Maybe it's a perma bull, or maybe it's a perma bear that just needs to have a new perspective on things. But hopefully this was able to help all of you out. And once again, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in next week's video.